Bud Cort, American actor, age 77, died February 11, 2026. Today we pay tribute to one of the most singular and unforgettable actors American cinema has ever produced. Bud Cort, best known for his haunting and beautiful performance in the 1971 cult classic Harold and Maude, has passed away at the age of 77. He died on February 11, 2026, in Connecticut, following a long illness. Walter Edward Cox, who would take the stage name Bud Cort, was born on March 29, 1948, in New Rochelle, New York. Growing up in Rye, New York, he showed an extraordinary acting ability from childhood, performing in school plays and community theater with a maturity and instinct far beyond his years. After moving to New York City, he enrolled at New York University's School of the Arts and began to work in theater, commercials, and soap operas, slowly building the foundation of what would become a remarkable and thoroughly unique career. His first major film opportunity came when legendary director Robert Altman spotted him and cast him in M*A*S*H in 1970. This was followed almost immediately by another Altman film, Brewster McCloud, also in 1970. Bud Cort was on his way, but it was the following year that everything changed. In 1971, director Hal Ashby cast Bud Cort opposite the extraordinary Ruth Gordon in Harold and Maude, the darkly comic, deeply moving story of a death-obsessed 20-year-old and a free-spirited 79-year-old who fall in love with life together. The film was, upon its release, misunderstood by many critics, but audiences found it, passed it along, and fell completely and irreversibly in love with it. Harold and Maude became one of the great cult films of the 20th century, and Bud Cort's performance as Harold, withdrawn, yearning, quietly heartbreaking, and ultimately reborn, is at the absolute center of why it works. His performance is the kind that is almost impossible to describe adequately. It is so internal, so specific, so completely inhabited, that it feels less like acting and more like simply being. You watch Bud Cort as Harold, and you believe every single second of it. It is one of those rare performances that changes you a little bit every time you watch it. The role defined him, which, as he admitted in interviews, was both a blessing and a curse. "I didn't make a film for 5 years because everything I was offered was that same kind of character," he once said. But he refused to be typecast, and over the following decades, he built a rich and varied body of work, appearing in Kevin Smith's Dogma as God in Disguise, in Wes Anderson's The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, in And the Band Played On, and in numerous other films and television projects. He was also a distinguished voice actor, lending his voice to Batman, the animated series and other projects, and a dedicated member of the Actors Studio as both performer and director. Bud Cort was 77 years old. He leaves behind no peer, because there is simply no one quite like him. He was an original. He was Harold. He was unforgettable. Rest in peace, Bud. You taught us that the world is ours to love. Valentino Garavani, Italian fashion designer, age 93, died January 19, 2026. Today we pay tribute to a man who is not merely a fashion designer but a genuine artist, a creator of beauty who changed the way the world's most remarkable women dressed for over half a century. Valentino Garavani, the Italian couturier known simply as Valentino, passed away peacefully at his home in Rome on January 19, 2026, at the age of 93, surrounded by the people who loved him. Valentino Clemente Ludovico Garavani was born on May 11, 1932, in Voghera, a small town in the Lombardy region of northern Italy. From the very beginning, his life was defined by beauty. As a child, he was captivated by cinema, by glamour, by the image of perfectly dressed women on the silver screen. "I was crazy for the silver screen," he once said. "I was crazy for beauty." That passion would never leave him. After studying fashion in Milan, and then moving to Paris as a teenager, he apprenticed under some of the greatest names in haute couture, including Jean Desses and Guy Laroche, learning the rigorous, precise craft of the atelier. He absorbed it all, and then, in 1959, he did the bravest thing a young designer can do. He opened his own house. The House of Valentino was founded on Rome's Via Condotti And from that moment forward, the world of fashion was forever changed. It was the beginning of a love story between Valentino and beauty, Valentino and women, Valentino and Rome. In 1960, he met the man who would become his greatest partner, not just in love but in business, Giancarlo Giametti. Together, they built one of the most iconic fashion empires in history. Giametti handled the business. Valentino handled the dreams. His rise was meteoric. By the mid-1960s, he was dressing Jacqueline Kennedy, including the famous ivory lace dress she wore for her wedding to Aristotle Onassis in 1968, and his name had become synonymous with the highest levels of elegance and sophistication. Elizabeth Taylor, Audrey Hepburn, Sophia Loren, Princess Grace of Monaco. The list of women who wore Valentino reads like a roll call of the 20th century's most iconic figures. And then there was the red. Valentino red, Rosso Valentino, a rich, specific, magnificent shade of scarlet that he made his signature from the very beginning of his career. It was not merely a color. It was a statement, one of the boldest, most confident, most beautiful statements in the history of design. Every collection featured at least one piece in Valentino red, and every woman who wore it was transformed. At the 2001 Academy Awards, Julia Roberts wore a vintage Valentino gown, black and white, strapless, breathtaking, and became the defining image of that evening. It was a perfect Valentino moment, he said afterwards. She looked like a dream. Valentino retired in January 2008 after 48 years at the helm of his house. More than 10,000 people lined up in Rome to pay their respects following his death, a testament to the love he inspired not just in the fashion world, but in the hearts of ordinary people who had grown up seeing his creations and understanding, on some deep level, that they were in the presence of something truly extraordinary. Valentino Garavani was 93 years old. He was the last of a kind, the last of the great old-world couturiers who believed that making a woman beautiful was not merely a job but a calling. Rest in peace, Valentino. The world has never looked more beautiful because of you. Jesse Jackson, American civil rights leader, age 84, died February 17, 2026. Today we honor one of the most consequential figures in the history of American civil rights, a man whose voice thundered through 5 decades of struggle, whose words shaped the conscience of a nation, and whose life's work made the United States a more just and equal place. The Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson Sr. passed away on February 17, 2026, at the age of 84. He had been hospitalized in the weeks leading up to his death, battling progressive supranuclear palsy, a rare neurological condition he had been diagnosed with years earlier. Jesse Louis Burns, who would later take the surname Jackson, was born on October 8, 1941, in Greenville, South Carolina. He grew up in the Jim Crow South, where segregation was the law and the daily reality of life for Black Americans. Those early experiences of injustice, the signs above water fountains, the back of the bus, the schools that told Black children they mattered less, did not crush Jesse Jackson. They ignited him. As a young man, Jackson became deeply involved in the civil rights movement, and it was through this work that he came into the orbit of the towering figure who would define his early life. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Jackson became one of King's most trusted lieutenants, working with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and organizing direct action campaigns across the South. He was present at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis on April 4, 1968, when Dr. King was assassinated, a moment that would define the rest of Jackson's life. In the years following King's death, Jackson emerged as one of the most powerful and influential voices in American public life. He founded Operation Push in Chicago in 1971, People United to Save Humanity, an organization dedicated to economic empowerment and civil rights for Black Americans. His ability to organize, to negotiate, and to speak with an eloquence and moral force that few could match made him a figure of genuine national significance. His rhetorical gifts were extraordinary. Jesse Jackson spoke in a way that moved people, that made them feel the weight of history and the urgency of the present simultaneously. His famous speech at the 1984 Democratic National Convention, in which he coined the phrase, "Our flag is red, white, and blue, but our nation is a rainbow," is considered one of the greatest political speeches in modern American history. He ran for the Democratic presidential nomination in both 1984 and 1988, becoming the second African American to mount a major campaign for the presidency and winning millions of votes and several state primaries in the process. In 1986, he founded the Rainbow Coalition, later merged with Operation Push to form the Rainbow/Push Coalition, continuing his advocacy for working people, minorities, and the poor. Jesse Jackson was not without controversy. His career was long and complex, and he attracted criticism as well as admiration. But his impact on the arc of American history is undeniable. He registered millions of new voters. He negotiated the release of hostages and American prisoners abroad on multiple occasions. He marched, he organized, he spoke, and he never stopped fighting. He was 84 years old. He leaves behind a family, a nation that he helped to shape, and a legacy that will be debated and celebrated for generations. Rest in peace, Reverend Jackson. You kept hope alive. Chuck Norris. American actor and martial artist, age 86, died March 19, 2026. Today we say goodbye to a man who became something more than an actor. He became a symbol, an icon, a legend so deeply embedded in popular culture that his name became its own punchline, its own mythology, its own shorthand for toughness. Chuck Norris, the American actor, martial artist, and cultural phenomenon, has passed away at the age of 86. His family confirmed his death on March 20, 2026, following a sudden hospitalization in Hawaii. They described his passing as the loss of someone who is not just a beloved father and husband, but a man whose values, discipline, faith, perseverance, defined everything he did. Carlos Ray Norris was born on March 10, 1940, in Ryan, Oklahoma, into a modest family that moved frequently during his childhood. Quiet and reserved by nature, Norris struggled with shyness as a young man. Not exactly the profile you might imagine for the man who would become one of the most famous action stars in the world. But life has a way of revealing what people are made of. After graduating from high school, Norris enlisted in the United States Air Force and was stationed in South Korea. It was there, at the age of 18, that he encountered Tang Soo Do, a Korean martial art, and his life changed entirely. He threw himself into training with a total dedication that would become the defining characteristic of everything he did. He earned his black belt, then began studying multiple other disciplines, including Taekwondo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, and Karate, eventually earning black belts in several of them. After his honorable discharge from the Air Force in 1962, Norris opened his own chain of martial arts schools and began competing at the highest levels of the sport. He won the Professional Middleweight Karate Championship in 1968 and held it for 6 years. Along the way, he met Bruce Lee, then a young martial artist building his own reputation, and the two became friends and sparring partners. Lee cast Norris as his opponent in the climactic fight scene of Way of the Dragon in 1972, and the exposure introduced Norris to a global audience. His film career took off from there. He starred in a string of action films throughout the 1970s and 1980s. Good Guys Wear Black, A Force of One, Code of Silence, Missing in Action, The Delta Force, establishing himself as one of the premier action stars of his era. He was not a conventional movie star. He was never particularly interested in being one. What he was genuinely authentic. When Chuck Norris threw a kick on screen, it was real. When he expressed a value, it was one he actually held. Then came Walker, Texas Ranger, which premiered in 1993 and ran for 8 seasons, becoming one of the most successful action dramas in television history. Norris as Cordell Walker, the principled, quietly heroic Texas Ranger, became a staple of American television. The show was watched by tens of millions of viewers and made Norris a household name in countries around the world. And then, of course, the internet happened. The Chuck Norris Facts meme, a series of increasingly absurd, hyperbolic jokes about his supposed superhuman abilities, swept the world in the mid-2000s and transformed him into a genuine cultural phenomenon. He took it with remarkable good humor and even participated in several winking parodies of his own legend. Behind all of it was a man of deep faith, a committed Christian who wrote about his beliefs, supported causes he cared about, and lived according to a personal code of honor that was entirely consistent with the characters he spent his career playing. Chuck Norris was 86 years old. He leaves behind his beloved wife, Gina, his children, and a legacy that will continue to inspire and make people smile for generations to come. Rest in peace, Chuck. The world was always a little safer knowing you were in it.